Hey there everyone, I'm Vicki Howell. Welcome to Ask Me Monday. It's good to see you as always here on this beautiful Monday morning here in Buda, Texas, just right outside, just a scotch to the left of Austin. I am here thanks in part to the support of Knitter's Pride and Knit Pro, and I have such an action-packed show for you today that I think I'm going to skip all of the chit chat so that I can dive in. But that doesn't mean that you can't chit chat. Talk amongst yourself. I'll try not to get distracted by the comments flying across the screen. But I would love to hear if you do want to tell me what you're making right now. Share all of the things. Tell us where you're watching from. Connect with each other. Use the comment section as your community corkboard. Share stuff. That's what we're here for. All right. So, such a long show that I even brought a chair, which I never do. So, I wanted to do something that I haven't done. And there's our train, our Monday morning train. I wanted to do an episode. I feel like I've done it before, but I couldn't find it. Maybe it probably wasn't an Ask Me Monday. It might have been a blog post or something. But I haven't talked about in a minute at least, in any way, just sort of the when, what's for our knit and our crochet tools. So I thought I would dedicate an entire episode of Ask Me Monday to just that. So what does that mean? That means that I'm going to take you through a comprehensive, relatively, tour through different types of knitting needles and crochet hooks. That means that we're going to cover the materials that they're sometimes made out of. We're going to talk about the different types, and then we're going to talk about why you might choose to use them or not to use them. So I've written this all out, well, in a very abbreviated version at vickihowell.com so that you can go back and reference if you'd like, or pin it for if you want to, think about it later. But I'm gonna go way deeper in here because frankly, I like to talk more than I like to type. So we're gonna go over all kinds of tools today. Now, almost everything that you see today is going to be a product from Knitter's Pride, but I'm going to be speaking in mostly general terms because a lot of this will, all of this will apply to really any brand. We're really talking about tools from a general perspective. I just happen to love working with Knitter's Pride. So I'm going to use those, but go into your own stash or go to your own LYS and see what they have and figure out what's going to work best for you. So I'm going to start out talking about the materials that things are made of, that tools are made of, and then I'm going to move over to different types of knitting needles, and then I'm going to move over to different types of crochet hooks, and then I'm going to throw in a few notions on the side. So I'm going to try and do this without it taking, 3 hours. I'm going to try and do this in under 30 minutes, but So if you can't watch it all now live, if you're watching at noon Central Time, then you're watching it live. If you can't watch it all, then watch the replay. I will have it embedded in the post at vickihowell.com, or as always, you can go to my Facebook playlist, go to videos, click on Ask Me Monday, and I try to get them onto YouTube, but I kind of suck at getting that done. So there'll be lots of places to check them out. All right, so without further ado, let's dive in. So knitting needles and crochet hooks are made from a number of different materials. I'm not going to cover all of them, but I will cover sort of the main materials. I want to start off this entire session though by saying the things that I'm telling you, obviously they come from, a decade and a half of experience, but it's really important that you hear me on this. A lot of the tools that you choose are based on personal preference. So what gives you the most success? So just because I prefer, say, working with circulars, and I'll talk about that in a second, doesn't mean that straights aren't going to be your jam jiggity jam. I'm going to give you the information that I have, but I encourage you and empower you to use it where it makes sense in your life and cast it aside where it doesn't. I really just want you to find what is most important, the tools, the yarn, the project that inspire you to be creative. So just know that's the place where this is coming from. All right, so let's talk materials finally. All right, so probably the most, the most well-known material that we all, have grown up seeing. If you ever sort of dove into your, your granny's stash, you probably saw is, you probably see them at garage sales, are needles made out of aluminum. I don't have any of the old school aluminum ones, but you know the ones I'm talking about, right? They are the OG needles. But I do have I'm going to be working with, these are just tips from circular needles, but this is a line called Zing. This is aluminum. And so this is really great. And this is actually a higher end aluminum than maybe ones that you might see at like the craft store or whatever. So these are the Zing line. And it comes, you know, you can get them aluminum and hooks. These are circular needle points. They come in double points. We'll talk about those in a second. And what's great about aluminum is they're pretty lightweight. Not the lightest, but they're light enough. They make a really satisfying, like sword kind of shing shing when you work with them. And they're the most cost effective of all of the materials. Now, if you're going to dive in a little further, this is an interchangeable set. I'll talk about those in a second. So that isn't like, you know, that's a little bit fancier. But if you are just going to go and, you know, and you just were like, you know what, I don't know if I'm into this whole knitting and crochet thing. I thought I would just give it a little spin. You can buy an aluminum needle or hook, you know, for very inexpensively. You can give it a try and see if it works. Aluminum is good for kind of grabby yarns like wool or anything that needs a little help because it's slick. It's not as great for real slick yarns, but it's fine. I call aluminum needles like the workhorse. They are going to get the job done. These things are way nicer than the aluminum ones that I learned on when I was a kid. But in general, that's what I have to say about aluminum. All right. If you want to, another of the inexpensive versions, actually, Knitter's Pride doesn't make any, so I'm just going to use I don't even know what brand this is. Plastic. Plastic are another of the types of needles that you can find at pretty much any craft store. They're inexpensive. The plus is that they have a nice grab on them, so if you're working with a super sleek yarn, so the opposite of what I said for aluminum, they will grab it a little bit. So they're not real great. Plastic isn't real great if you're working with a wool or something that's stickier. It's just going to be a little harder to maneuver, which then puts a little more strain on your wrists and your hands. So just keep that in mind. Plastic is relatively lightweight as well, and you know, again, what is fun is it comes in a bunch of fun colors. So and is a really good option for kids, really, if you're trying. Back in the day, Knitter's Pride used to make these really great these marbles. They don't make them anymore, but the reason why I did bring them in is it reminded me that now you can find molds for you crafty types out there to make resin versions yourself. You know, are they my favorite plastic in general? Not really. But they do the job, and some people swear by them. There's some great sets out there. So again, you do you. All right, so if you want to step up the notch just a scotch, where you're like, you know what, I'm into this knitting and crochet thing. I think I'm gonna try, you know, the next up material. My probably favorite sort of midline go-to material for needles is bamboo. So these are just tips, an interchangeable set from Knitter's Pride, their bamboo set. I love bamboo. Bamboo is a sustainable material. It's a wood, so it warms like the more expensive woods. Because of buffing technology, they've got a nice shine on them. So they work pretty well for both slick and more traction heavy yarns. They're they're lightweight, they're warming, and they're really cost effective. They're not going to be as inexpensive as likely as an aluminum, but they're the next step up and they're pretty delightful. So if you're just thinking about, you know, maybe just taking that little step up, I highly recommend bamboo, and that comes in hooks. I don't have a bamboo hook with me, but it comes in hooks and needles, double pointed needles, all of the things. Okay, a next step up past that is just straight up wood. Probably this is going to be my favorite of all of the things. So here are a few examples So these are Symphony Dreams, as are these. If you watch the show often, you see that I work with my gingers all the time. These are wood. And then I also have my own line, also wood, also made by Knitter's Pride. So when you think of wood just in general, you may not think, ooh, that's slick, that's shiny. But high-end wood is laminated and gorgeous, or buffed, depending on the company. And it's just lovely. I work with wood probably more than any other material. It is more of an investment. It is these, you know, if you buy them in a set or a single set, they really are, they're sturdy and they're going to last you for a while, but they will be a little bit more expensive. But they're really worth the investment, especially if you think you're going to be sticking with this stitching for a little bit. They warm in the hands. They are just kind of a delight, and they work with both slick yarns and yarns that have traction. So wood, the woods change. You can buy different types of woods, so I'm just using a general term, but they're really beautiful to look at. And there's something about working with either a cool cotton or a warm wool with the wood in your hands that's just really sort of tactile and delightful. So I highly recommend wood. All right, and then the next one, I don't know if I have an example here. Oh, I should have grabbed one. Okay, so the next, I wouldn't even say the next level up. It's probably equivalent. I used to refer to them as sort of the Cadillac of needles, like knitting with a Cadillac, whatever that means, or crochet. I wonder if I have some over in the studio. You know what, I'm gonna walk you over. I don't have, so the Knitter's Pride version is Nova Platinas, and I don't have those here, but I'm just gonna show you the material. Okay, so sit with me for a while. These are my needle holders. So you can see this is, that it's too close to my face. You can see that this is a neat nickel plated brass. And it's just a really super shiny, hollow needle, so it's nice and light, and it is so slick and shiny that your stitches are just going to fly off the needles or off the hook. So I guess if you're working with a real slick yarn, it may not be your best laid plan unless you're that good, but they are really going to speed up your knitting or crochet. Super slick, a little bit more of an investment, but very, very lovely to work with. So those are the general overall materials. There are other materials out there, but those are the basics. Okay, so now I want to move on to different types of knitting needles. All right, so we're going to go basic to more complex. All right, first up, straights. So these happen to be the Knitter's Pride Symphony Dreams, but you can get them, all of these come in any of the materials that I've already talked about. Straights are probably what everybody learned how to knit on. Some of you might knit on them until your knitting life has come to an end. You can knit with them forever, or like me, you might choose to really not use them very often. I tend to not use them as much as I used to because, well, there's two reasons. One, I like the shorter needles on a circular. I'll talk about that in a second. But two, if you're working on a heavier piece, all of the weight, all of the stitches are on these straight needles, and they can be a little bit difficult on your wrists. And when you've been, knitting for 20 years, it can take its toll. But I teach on straights all of the time. I think they're great for smaller projects, especially, scarves. It's perfect for scarves or any little flat, like small baby garment that you're going to seam later. You can only knit back and forth on them, so not in the round. But like I said, I didn't say this. Like I said, you can use them forever if you want. And when I went to London to teach at Ali Pali, I was amazed. I had a whole project that I was teaching on circulars, and nobody had circulars and nobody knew how to use them. So and I was just floored. I guess in the UK, they're not as big the straights are really the way that folks go. So, maybe it is, again, it's personal preference. It also might be cultural. So those are straights. All right, the next up are circulars. I thought that I had one out. So a circular needle is, here I can use this little one. A circular needle is actually two needles, but connected by one cord. So it's got two tips, and again, these could be made out of aluminum or plastic or wood or bamboo. These are also the Symphony Dreams that I'm holding right now. And they come in different length cords. Here's the cord, and the cord is really flexible. The cord lengths can range from like 8.5 inches all the way to 60 inches. But really the most common cord sizes that you'll see are 24-inch up to about 40 inches. So the thing that's great about these is it allows you to knit in the round, which means you're never working on the back side of the fabric. And it allows you to create cylindrical pieces of fabric. But the other thing, and why I alluded to this earlier, it also is great if you want to knit back and forth, if you don't join things in a round. I use these almost always when I'm knitting because the weight of your fabric can lay on this, is held by this cord. And if you're working on something bigger like a shawl or a blanket or a sweater, that cord with all the weight of that fabric can then sit on your lap. And so you really only have a little bit of fabric at a time that you're working with. It's much easier on your wrists. And also I just find that it's less cumbersome than having the bigger sticks. Again, personal preference, but often almost always when you see me doing demonstrations on this show or on the knit show or wherever, you'll notice that I'm using circulars even when I'm working on flat projects. And that's just, again, personal preference. So these come in different lengths, like I said, and also different lengths of needles. If you are working with a shorter needle like this is, I believe, a 16-inch. This would be used for, say, a beanie. The needle length is going to be shorter so that the actual circle can be created. If you are working on a longer one, 24 inches and up, maybe 20. Now, 24 inches and up, you are going to have a longer, I'll show you the difference. Let me just grab one you're going to have a longer needle. So you can see the difference in these. This needle it's an interchangeable set, and I'm going to show you that in a second, but this needle is made to go on a longer cord, and this needle is made to go on a shorter cord. And that's just because you wouldn't be able to bend this needle to really create that smaller circumference. The other, so these, because of the cord, because there's a cord, that sort of delegates the actual circumference of your project, or it can be bigger but not smaller. So if I'm making a hat that's 21 inches in circumference, let's say, I'd want to work on a needle that's 20-inch, which is rare to find, so probably 16-inch. I can scrunch fabric, but I can't stretch it without it being misshapen. So you do have that sort of constraint. However, that constraint goes away if you work with the magic loop method. And I have linked in the post at vickyhowell.com for my tutorial for that. And that is just a method where you use a really long cord and you twist it, and you only use the amount of cord that you need at one time. Different skill set, but what that does do is that means that you can go all the way down to the smallest circumference for which you would normally need to go down to double pointed needles, and I'll show you those in a second. I do want to just make a couple of side notes on needles and circulars. I wanted to show you, this is from the Mindful Connection. There's also a little subset. So these are one of the little, like the tiny ones, I think they're 8-inch maybe, 8.5 inch. So these would be for, say socks or whatever. But I also wanted to show you that there can be a difference in tips. So you'll notice, here's two needles. I don't know if you can really tell. This tip is a lot pointier than this tip. Really pointy tips are excellent for if you're working with lace work, because when you're doing increases and decreases, often you have to pick up a loop and transfer it. The extra pointiness of a needle that is specifically for lace knitting really does help speed up the process. So this is just a little set of lace needles from the Mindful Connection. And then you can see here's just another, and these are actually stainless steel. That's one that I did not mention. These are, I would say, these are also a very nice set. So different than the nickel plated, not as slick, but these are lovely to work with. So stainless steel is another route to go. All right. Oh, and then I wanted to also show you, so mostly what you've seen is you've seen me working with these little tips, and that's because once you realize, oh, I'm gonna hang out in this whole knitting game for a bit, it might behoove you to invest in a circular set. But just like with everything else, there's a big range in prices. So a bamboo set is a really affordable set to invest in. Also, so is I don't know that I have the Zing set. I thought I had the Zing set. The Zing aluminum set is affordable. And actually this set's pretty affordable as well. These are the Smart Sticks. This is a subset of a subset. These are also aluminum, but they have 1-inch increments measured out on both the cords and the needles so that you can also use them as a measuring tape. So you can go that route, or if you're feeling like, you know what, this is my passion, I am going to really dive in and invest in something that I know I'll probably have for the rest of my life, you might want, look at all of them that are gone because I use them all the time. You might want to invest in something like this ginger set, or, you know, like I said, they made me some aqua versions, which are made out of the same wood, or the Symphony Dreams. Then there's one other option. So let me just say one more thing about circulars, or about the interchangeable sets. It's more of an investment going in, but the sets usually come with, you know, 3 or 4 different lengths of cords, and then, you know, 6, 8 more different sizes of needles. So if you think about all of the combinations that you can have with the size of needles and the lengths of cords, if you were to buy fixed versions, which means you can't take them off, of all of those different sizes, it would probably cost you triple the amount. So if you do think that you are going to be working on a range of projects, you know, in your, you know, creative life, then it is definitely worth the investment. All right. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about, this is just kind of a sidebar. I'm not going to spend too much time. Most of the needles that you see will just be your traditional cylindrical needles with a point, but also what's been kind of in vogue over the past, I don't know, maybe like 7 years, are these sort of cube needles. So these are called cubics. These are also by Knitter's Pride. And the benefit to these, often people say that they're easier on their hands. There's something about the shape that's a little bit more ergonomic. It does not change the shape of the stitch. It just changes the hold. So this is one of those things that you should give it a try. You might want to buy a fixed set, give it a try. If you love them, then invest in a full set. And you can get cubics in all different, in I think single tip, I know double pointed needles, fixed circulars, and then the sets. All right, so I think that's it for, oh, no, it's not. The last type of needle that we need to talk about are double pointed needles. All right, double pointed needles look like this. And as the name infers, there's not one tip, but 2. So there's 2 points. And the purpose of these are, you work with them in sets. You can work in as few as 4 or an infinity number, but the sets usually come in 4 or 5. And they are so you can work on smaller circumferences. So this could mean the very end of a hat as it starts to get too small for, and you're not using the magic loop method, too small for that circumference, you would move over to double pointed needles. Or if you're working on a baby sock or any pair of socks or a pair of wrist warmers, these would be the needles to use. This is just one, these are Smart Sticks, but they come in all the materials that I've mentioned for all the needles. These are, you know, little wooden ones, and they come in different lengths. They come in the shorter length, which is great for socks, or maybe a little cuff. And then they come in longer lengths, which are great for things like sleeves. And some people just make entire hats on double pointed needles. They just bypass circulars altogether. So you'd use the little bit longer ones. These are, people either love or hate double pointed needles. I love them. I use them all of the time. I love that you could just pick up another one and another one and another one if your circumference is growing. There's really no end in sight. You're never working with more than 2 at a time while the other hang. Some folks find that cumbersome, some don't. So I implore you to give it a try. I really feel like they are a freeing needle. They offer all kinds of flexibility and are really easy to transport. You know, they're small. Well, I guess all needles are small. That was dumb. But I really dig them. So double pointed needles, for circumferences. You can absolutely knit small circumferences without using them by using the magic loop method, or you can skip it all together, work on straight needles, make flat pieces and seam them up the back. There's always options. All right, now let's move on to crochet. Thank you, crocheters, for being so patient. So there are, okay, so we just went over like 11 kinds of knitting needles. Crochet hooks are really, they are what they are. Now there's Tunisian hooks and that's a whole different craft, but just for crochet hooks, it's really, there's one gig. It's a crochet hook. So the things that you want to look at when you're trying to choose, when you're going about choosing a hook for a project are the shape, the handle, and let me try that again. The shape of the hook, the angle of the hook, the handle, and the material that it's made out of. So here are a few options. So this is a zing, and as you can see, this has a really round head. Now, there is no right answer here. You just have to kind of figure out what you love the most and then go with that. I highly encourage you to try different ones and figure out, you know, what works for you. So this one is the zing, and it's got a rounder head. So this would be really good if you were working with a yarn that had a lot of plies in it, because you wouldn't get your tip hooked on, no pun intended, onto those plies and split them. So that would be really good. And then aluminum is great for wool as well. This one is the opposite. See how pointy this is? This is a ginger hook, and this has a really pointy tip. These are great for if you're working on, spike stitches, or if you are working just through the front or the back loop. This little pointy action really, really helps with that. Now, you'll also notice the shape of the hook is a little bit different. Here, you know what? I'm going to bring you closer. Sit down, bring you closer. Okay, so you can see that the actual groove where the yarn goes is a little bit different. There's a little bit more space here, less of a hook. And then you'll see on, let's see, on this one, so this is a waves hook, it is somewhere in between. So let's see if I can do this without it blurring too much. All right, so you'll see really rounded, semi-rounded, pointed on the top, and then their heads, or the hook part, is at a slightly different angle. This is one of those things, it's just preference. There's nothing that's better or worse, it's just what works for you. So if you're working on something and you're like, oh man, I'm really frustrated, instead of like casting the craft to the side, try just a different tool. The tool can make the craft. There's another one, and these are all Knitter's Pride. I don't know that Knitter's Pride makes one like this, and I don't know what brand this is, but I just wanted to show you. There's also a really flat and pointy head and hook. This is my least favorite shape to work with, so I tend to just not even, I didn't have anything but that. And then you can decide on handles. So you can do, pretty round, or you can do, find one that's round, but that it's got a little place for the thumb, which is really nice because it helps with this action. I don't know what that's called. I don't feel like we need to be this close together, geez. Or probably my favorite of these are ones that have some type of rubber or plastic handle like this one that are also flat. They feel a little bit more ergonomic to me, and I just find them to be more comfortable. I also, and then you can also, depending on the fiber, you can either work with metal or you can work with wood. It just depends, like if I was working with maybe like a slick silk or cotton or rayon, I would totally gravitate towards this wood. Maybe for wool, like a raw, like Peruvian, I might go this route. So, but again, you do you. All right. Oh, so that is it for crochet, and you can buy them, again, you can buy them in sets. This is my set. This is I had a wave set, and I swear, I think I lost it on the set of the Knit Show like a few years ago, and so I just have these like beloved single ones. But then there's a zing set, And again, it's like I said, for the knitting needles, if you feel like you are going to do this craft thing for a while, it does ultimately save you money if you want to get a set, but don't feel like you have to by any stretch. Okay, so now I'm going to move to, we've covered needles, we've covered hooks. Now I want to move to notions. I'm going to start with notions with really that I should have done at the beginning, but we're going to call it notions because I forgot about it. Let's talk cable needles. So cable needles are not needed for making crocheted cables, but they are needed for making, well, not always, but for making knitted cables. And I just wanted to really quickly just show you a few different styles. So this one has a little dip and slip. This is a little like Hookmeister, and this is a straight up cable. None of those are actual names for them. These are Knitter's Pride, and these actually are also magnetic. They go into a necklace that they have. But all you need to know is that it doesn't matter which one you use for what. This is another thing that's preference. I personally feel like if you are going to be making a wider cable, the straight is not the best idea because stitches more easily fall off of it. However, if you're working a really small cable, like maybe a 4 cable, I prefer just an easy straight in and out and done. For bigger cables, I like a little dip, or I like the hook, especially if I'm working on a cable that doesn't have as much fabric in between, so as many straight rows in between. I like this hook because it's really going to hold on to those stitches for dear life so that they don't fall off. All right, now let's talk stitch markers. All right, so let me see, I wonder if I can do this and you can see it. This is a new and exciting angle for us. All right, so stitch markers. So these are from the Mindful collection also. These are little chakras, aren't they so cute? So these are stitch markers for knitting. They slide right onto the needle. So this can either show the beginning of a round, or it can show, I use them, well, it's not like I invented it. They're often used to show when there's repeats for a stitch pattern as well. So they come in different sizes for different size needles. This is for a bigger needle. This would probably go up to a size at least 13, maybe 15. This is for a smaller, probably go up to maybe like a 10. And they just slide on. So that's one kind, that's for knitting only. And they come in any number of materials. These are some straight up plastic ones. And then you can find them in plastic, you can find them in resin, you can find them in rubber, you can find them in elastic. Really, just anything that creates a little like circle around your needle works. All right, so that's one for knitting. This next one can be used for, well, the rest of these can be used for knitting or crochet. So these are interlocking. And so that means that you can put them in a crochet stitch because, you know, with crochet, you don't have a needle holding on to a ton of stitches. So you just are reliant on that one loop. You can stick it in the stitch and latch it on. Or you could use it to hold just a couple stitches if you needed to keep a couple stitches live. Say you were working on a baby garment and you were going to pick up part of a collar later or something. That would be a good option. These also work as progress keepers if you want to remind yourself, you know, when I get to this marker, then I've made this many rows. That didn't make sense. Let me try again. If you want to mark a particular place where perhaps you're going to put a pocket later, or you want to, for any reason, note where you did a certain, say, decrease or increase or just a certain skill. These are great for that. Another, I'm going to bust into the, you might have noticed the shawl I'm wearing is from our crochet box, which we have a few left, and these stitch markers come with it too. They're from Firefly Notes. I brought them out because these are bulb safety pins, but they also work as crochet stitch markers because they open and close. And you'll see them like this plain, or sometimes you'll see them with a charm on top of them. And then the other ones that work for crochet or as progress keepers, just like the the interlocking ones I just showed you, have little clasps, like little necklace clasps almost. Let me see if I can do better. Here, the gold is a little bit easier to see. So they have these little clasps. So this wouldn't work to, slide over a knitting needle, but it would hold on to a loop or a stitch. So this can either show you where you are in a row, or it can show you when a repeat starts, or it can mark when an increase or a decrease or a pocket placement is. So those are the main types of of stitch markers that you might come across. Okay, and then my last little notion I'm going to show you, I might as well stay like this because why not? Let's talk row counters. There is no school like the old school. I know that we've all got like cell phones and iPads and all of the things that we could keep track of, but sometimes analog is the best. And it doesn't even have to be digital, although they do make digital versions. I just love me a good counter. Maybe because when I was little, that's how my mom kept track of the grocery money when we went. Hers had more numbers than this, but I just really like it. Often I'm reading a pattern off my phone anyways, and so I don't want to switch back and forth. That's the same reason why I like an old school calculator. So this is really great. This is from the Knitter's Pride Mindful collection. Or if you're feeling jewelry-tastic, they also have a ring, and you can keep track of the rows by just turning the numbers. Isn't that cool? And this is the rainbow one, but it comes in all different. This one's a little bit big for me, but it comes in all different colors. So that's kind of fun. So you could just, keep this as part of your jewelry situation. And then you're like, what? I just knit a row and done. So that's kind of just a fun thing to have in your collection. All right. Woo, that was a lot. So this is the general scoop for the tools that you need to knit or crochet, or that you may consider using to knit or crochet, and the whens and the whys and the whats. Again, I'm going to end how I started. You do you. Find the materials that work for you, that speak to you, that give you the most success, and work with those regardless of what anybody tells you, including me, is the best choice for that project. If you have any questions, please just post them in the comments section. We'll get to them after the live feed. Please go to VickiHowell.com so that you can click through and see some of these needles and hooks and notions that I've shown you. And also, if you want to pin it on your Pinterest board so that you remember to use it as a reference, I wouldn't hate that idea either. All right, that's it for Ask Me Monday. I will be back here next Monday at noon Central Time, or you can watch the replay all of the places. You can go to my website and click on videos at the top, and you'll see a drop-down menu for Ask Me Monday. You can see, I think we're at 190 something episodes so far, so you can deep dive in there as you want. There's also loads of free patterns and content and tutorials, so be sure to check that. And if you dig my my long scarf that I'm wearing, that's all different colors. This is an exclusive colorway that I designed for Earth. They dyed it for me, and we have, it looks like we have maybe only four or five more limited edition crochet boxes left. That comes with the yarn to make this. It comes with a crochet hook, comes with the stitch markers, pattern, good stuff. And this is going to be an accessory that I take into the spring and summer because it's going to look so cute with a tank top. All right. Oh, and you can get that at yarnier.com. Details. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for starting your week creatively with me. If you know anybody that would be interested in this series, please share the video. It really helps when there's some word of mouth. All right. Be safe. Be healthy. Take care.